Formula One is braking, and this time, everyone inside the sport agrees. Not the fans. Not the media. The drivers. The best drivers in the world are openly saying this is wrong. Verstappen says it doesn't feel like Formula One. Hamilton says it's too complex to follow. Alonso says the driver doesn't even matter anymore. That's not criticism. That's a full-scale backlash. And it's happening because of something that should never exist in this sport. Cars are now slowing down, on full throttle, on the straight, losing up to 50 kilometers per hour, with no warning at all. And when one car loses that speed, and another doesn't, the difference can explode past 40 kilometers per hour, instantly. That's not racing. That's a high-speed risk. It already caused a near accident that proved everything the drivers warned about. And now the FIA is in emergency meetings, trying to fix a system that might already be out of control. But here's the part that changes everything. This didn't surprise anyone inside Formula One. The drivers predicted it. They explained it. They warned about it, before a single race even started. And they were ignored. So now there's only one question left. Did Formula One just create a problem so big, even its own drivers can't stop it? At first, it didn't look like a backlash. It looked like progress. A new era for Formula One. Cleaner. Smarter. Built for the future. That was the promise. An engine split perfectly in half. 50% electric power. 50% combustion. A bold idea that sounded impossible to get wrong. And on paper, it wasn't wrong. Everything made sense. The numbers worked. The vision was clear. The direction felt inevitable. But Formula One is not decided on paper. It's decided on track. At full speed. Under pressure. With no room for mistakes. And that's where everything started to fall apart. Because while the electric power increased massively, the battery didn't. It stayed exactly the same. Same capacity. Same limits. But now, under extreme demand, that single decision created a system that cannot sustain itself. At full deployment, the battery drains in seconds. Around 8 to 10 seconds, and it's completely empty. And when that happens, the car changes instantly. Not gradually. Not predictably. Instantly. The system switches from delivering power to recovering energy. Even if the driver is still flat on the throttle. That moment is where everything breaks. Because from that point on, the driver is no longer in control. The system takes over. And that creates something Formula One has never seen before. Unpredictable performance in the middle of a straight. Think about that. A driver is pushing at maximum speed. And suddenly, the car stops behaving the way it should. Not because of skill. Not because of setup. Because the energy is gone. And now the car is trying to recharge itself, while still racing. That's the core problem. But here's where it becomes even more frustrating. Drivers are already adapting. Not by pushing harder, but by slowing down. They lift off early. On straights. Before the braking zone. Not to defend. Not to attack. But to recharge the battery, before the system forces them to slow down even more. So they slow down, to avoid being slowed down harder later. That contradiction is the clearest proof something is fundamentally broken. And it changes everything about Formula One. Because this is no longer about pushing to the limit. It's about managing a system. Managing energy. Managing timing. Managing something invisible, but decisive. And when that happens, the essence of the sport starts to disappear. But this is still only the beginning. Because everything becomes far more dangerous the moment another car is involved. Everything changes when another car is involved. Because this system doesn't just fail. It fails differently, for everyone. One driver exits a corner with a full battery. Another exits with almost nothing left. Same track. Same moment. Completely different performance. At first, it looks normal. Both cars accelerate. Both drivers commit. But then, it happens. One car keeps pulling. The other suddenly stops gaining speed. Not gradually. Instantly. That's super clipping. And in that exact moment, the gap between them doesn't just grow. It explodes. We're talking about differences of 40, even 50 kilometers per hour, in seconds. Now imagine you're the driver behind. You're flat out. Focused on your braking point. Everything feels under control. Until suddenly, it isn't. The car in front is slower than expected. Much slower. And there is no warning. No signal. No pattern. No way to anticipate it. Just a car, losing speed where it should be fastest. That's not racing. That's survival. Pure instinct. And this is exactly what turned frustration into fury. Because this already happened. Japan. A car ahead enters super clipping. loses around 30 to 40 kilometers per hour, almost instantly. Another car arrives at full speed. The closing gap is massive. There is almost no time to react. The driver behind swerves, avoids contact. By meters. Just meters. And that moment changes everything. Because now, this is not theory. This is reality. This is what the drivers were warning about. Not just performance issues. Safety. Because this is the part the FIA didn't fully understand. Not how the system works alone, but how it behaves in traffic. Because Formula One is not about driving in isolation. It's about fighting. Wheel to wheel. Corner to corner. And that requires one critical element. Trust. Drivers push to the limit because they trust the car. They trust the response. They trust the speed. They trust what happens when they go flat out. But now, that trust is gone. Because the car can change behavior without warning. Not based on driver input. Not based on skill. Based on energy. Invisible. Unpredictable. Constantly changing. And when that trust disappears, everything becomes dangerous. Drivers hesitate. Or worse, they commit and the car does something unexpected. That's when mistakes happen. That's when accidents happen. And that's when the sport crosses a line it should never cross. But here's what makes this even more explosive. This wasn't hidden. This wasn't impossible to predict. The drivers saw it coming. They warned about it before the season even started. They described exactly this scenario. And still, nothing changed. Which is why the reaction now is different. This isn't normal frustration. This is anger. Because the drivers are not just dealing with a flawed system. They are dealing with a system that they were forced to race after warning it was dangerous. And now there's a question no one inside Formula One can avoid anymore. If the drivers don't trust the cars, how can anyone trust the sport? The FIA had no choice. Not anymore. Not after the data. Not after the near disaster. Not after every single driver said the same thing. So something changed. They moved fast. Emergency meetings were called. Teams were brought in. Engine manufacturers were pushed to respond. And for the first time, the FIA stopped defending the rules and started trying to control them. That shift is everything. Because Formula One doesn't react like that unless something is already out of control. Now there are multiple solutions being discussed behind closed doors. Some are simple. Others could completely change how these cars behave. But here's the problem. None of them fix the real issue. Every solution is a compromise. One of the most urgent fixes focuses on something very specific. Why drivers are lifting off on the straight. Right now, lifting off allows the car to recover more energy than staying flat on the throttle. Which means drivers are rewarded for going slower. So the proposed fix is simple. Make energy recovery the same, whether the driver lifts or not. Remove the advantage. Remove the behavior. Make the straight feel natural again. But even that doesn't solve everything. Because super clipping still exists. It just becomes less extreme. Another solution goes deeper. Reduce the electric power when the battery gets too low. Stretch the energy. Avoid the sudden drop in speed. Make everything more predictable. But again, there's a cost. Less power. Less acceleration. Less of that brutal intensity that defines Formula One. And suddenly, the entire debate changes. Because now the question isn't how to make the cars faster. It's how to make them safer. And that shift changes everything. Because once safety becomes the priority, it means performance has already failed. And that's why Formula One is in serious trouble. Not just because something is broken, but because fixing it changes what the sport is supposed to be. Make it safer, and it becomes slower. Keep it fast, and it stays unpredictable. There is no perfect solution, only compromise. And here's the hardest truth. This cannot be fully fixed this season. Because the real problem is built into the design. The batteries are too small. The power demand is too high. That balance is locked. And you cannot rebuild that in the middle of a championship. So what happens now? The season continues. With patches. With temporary fixes. With small adjustments trying to control a massive flaw. Which means every race from this point forward is not just competition. It's a live experiment. Drivers adapting. Teams reacting. The FIA trying to stay ahead. But maybe they're already behind. And that leads to the question no one inside Formula One wants to answer. Is the FIA still controlling the sport? Or is the sport now reacting to a mistake that was too big to fix from the start? And this is where everything becomes bigger than just a backlash. Because now, it's not just about what's happening on track. It's about what Formula One is becoming. Behind the scenes, something has already shifted. Quietly, but completely. This is no longer about fixing the season. It's about surviving it. Teams are no longer asking how to go faster. They're asking how to stop this from happening again. Because once drivers start saying the car doesn't feel like a Formula One car, once they admit they are not fully in control, once they openly question the rules, you're no longer dealing with a technical problem. You're dealing with a crisis of identity. And that's far more dangerous. Because Formula One doesn't just sell speed. It sells belief. The belief that what you're watching is the absolute limit of performance. The absolute limit of human control. But right now, that belief is starting to break. Fans are seeing cars lift on straights. They're seeing speed disappear, without explanation. They're hearing drivers talk about managing energy, instead of attacking corners. And once that image settles, it's almost impossible to reverse. Because perception spreads faster than performance. And this is why everything now points to the future. 2027. Not as an upgrade, but as a reset. A complete reset. Because the lesson from 2026 is now impossible to ignore. If you increase electric power, you must increase battery capacity. If systems become more complex, they must remain predictable. And most importantly, the driver must always stay in control. Because the moment the system overrides the driver, Formula One stops being Formula One. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Even if 2027 fixes everything, even if the cars become predictable again, even if the drivers regain full control, there is one question that won't disappear. How did this happen in the first place? Because this wasn't hidden. The data was there. The warnings were there. The drivers said it early. And still, nothing changed. Which means the real problem is not just the regulation. It's the process behind it. The decisions that allowed it. The system that approved it. And if that doesn't change, then this won't be the last time Formula One finds itself here, at the edge, trying to fix something that should have never been broken. And that's why this moment matters more than any race result. Because this is not just about engines, not just about rules. It's about whether Formula One can still control its own future, or if it has already crossed a line, where even the drivers no longer recognize the sport they're racing in.